Last year the art team did a full playthrough to see what inspires us. Early on we reached the water palace and didn't really jump out at anyone, so it kind of fell into the later category. Important enough that it kind of needs to be represented, at least in my opinion. The first areas are more of a training ground, including a boss you can't really lose to. But once you get to the palace, it kind of sets the story in motion. You get all the exposition and your quest is spelled out for you. Just visiting the palace is part of it, so that's a freebie. Once you're out of the palace, bosses of the game can and will kill you. So the training wheels are off, but Lucas still serves as a guide, and you'll be revisiting her a lot, either to heal up, save, or just work on your magic. So since I decided I was going to be doing the water palace, it really just came to what am I going to do with it? So we are in the water palace. This was the scene. This is how it started. This is the scene in the game. So what do I got in here? I got these two torches that are framing the water seed. That's pretty important. These two platforms coming up directly to the seed. That's pretty important. I have some of this form back here. It got pushed back a lot more in the 3D version that you could probably see at the end. And I like this great thing over here. And so one of the things that interests me in this scene, because there's not too much going on. It's a little bit of flat room, and it's pretty big. So I ended up having to condense some elements down into a square for the jewel case, instead of this landscape form it would have been. Anyways, let's talk about what interests me and what catches my eye on this thing. Over here we have these big gaping chasms, and it's kind of around the whole palace, and then there's these pillars over here. That's pretty interesting. And then there's this lake over here. I did take some of this and just kind of push it up, and so the seed itself sits in the lake itself, and I knocked out this wall entirely and just made it an extension back into like a big lake behind. You can't really see it, but it's there. Just remodeling the whole place. Hope Luca doesn't mind. Anyways, this room is pretty long, so in the beginning I actually did a couple of versions. One of them was from the front, you can probably see on the 3D version, and that's the one I ended up going with. Changed a bit of the angle up a few times, wasn't really happy with it, but settled on one. And the other one was for seeing the seed from the back view, and it would have been more seeing more of this long room. And while this goes down a few ways, you can't really see that much. It would have been a little bit interesting, but we ended up saying it was too unrecognizable because you never really see the area like that. So one of the big inspirations on my image for the water palace was taken from the game, but not as something you can see or just walk around as. It's actually a quote that Lucas says in the game. The quote is that the ebb and flow brings news around the world to Luca. And that's kind of like this room down here. I suppose you could just sit in this water and get the ebb and flow. But I wanted to bring it up more towards the sea itself. So I dug out a hole and stuck some water in here and just made it giant room just flooded with water just flowing everywhere. I really wanted that quote to just push the images. And there you go. Last thing I wanted to talk about was some of the process that went into it. Since I didn't record it, I can't show you the painting process. So I'll be talking about more of the thought process and the changes that it went through. It did change quite a bit over the months since I ended up revisiting it, juggling different projects. So in this first take, it's actually a completely different take. It doesn't really look that different, but this is more of a ground level, whereas the finished piece is more of an establishing shot. The seed is a lot closer, and everything is a lot darker in this one. The 3D is obviously not that far in, but that was actually intentional, keeping it dark like that. So what it was actually going to be was a mixture between two different areas actually. It was going to be between the Water Palace and Undyne's Cave. I'll show you Undyne's Cave right now. Undyne's Cave is a little off to the side of the Water Palace and you visit it later. And it is connected to the Water Palace, but in the game it's kind of just shoved off to the side. So I wanted to play with the idea of connecting it to the actual palace. This would have been more of a naturalistic approach to the palace, where it's actually stuck inside the cave. Like they built the palace inside the cave. So this image would have been completely dominated by these torches as the only lighting source really. Maybe the seed, but no sunlight at all. And these windows would probably just have a little bit of torches behind it. So it would be pretty much all green and blue. Moving on though, it became less cave and more palace. I did like the original ideas that I had set up with it for composition. There's this waterfall over here, and this one, and this one, and they all kind of just framed the seed. I did like the idea of keeping something cutting out, showing something going behind the seed, and I kept that all the way up into the final. So I just jumped back into the 3D, fill some of the spaces, changed things around, gave an actual wall to it, changed these waterfalls over here. They became more of a tiny waterfall with these ledges, adding a little more interest to the scene with different layers. I did about one more major revision to the scene in 3D, and this is it. Taking out the platforms, adding those stairs, added the button that was Ali's request. Changed the torches up so they're not just cylinders, add some of these pillars, changed the wall, and at this point it was not a cave or going back into darkness. It was actually going to be outside, so I've already decided that point. So this is the final version of the 3D. I put a lot more work into the seed itself because that's going to be kind of the focus of the scene. And I've tossed a light behind so you can see that yes, indeed it is outside. I added this little indent of incline of the roof. That's actually a game element over here. You never really see it, but they did take the time to add that little slope. So I added it in there. Talk about studying the game. There's this grate over here, and I specifically wanted this grate to be able to go down inside, and there's this room that would go down in here and off to the side, because that does happen in the game. So that is intentional, that is just directly lined up with that. Added the railing, only on one side though, and just add some windows, and that's pretty much. So after this point, I was pretty much satisfied with 3D. Not really going to touch it anymore, so I'm just going to go straight into some of the painting. This is the early roughing in. Started the water, putting some basic light sources down, adding some of the fire, some lights from the outside, glow on the seed. Moving on, this is kind of like a noise layer. Just adding some of that mist of the waterfalls. Doesn't really look that hot though. One more thing to note about this one before moving on. This was actually just going to be a platform, like a stone little indent or a ledge. But I actually started changing it into a pool at this point. Moving on, I decided that the light source over here was kind of too blown out, and it was really catching the eye. Didn't really want the focus to be over there, so I put the focus more back over here. Doing this darker shape on the seed itself and having it more illuminated by the torches. This is kind of like a torch illumination pass. Everything is just kind of green. Oh, I lied. I went back into the 3D one more time for these Undyne statues in the back. I like the idea of connecting the palace somehow to Undyne, and I couldn't, even though I went away from the cave idea of connecting it directly to Undyne. I like having it, Undyne being represented somehow, some way. So it's like You know, inspired by those old Greek statues or something of mythological creatures in the building. Just throwing some temporary window designs in there and adding some light beams coming down from these windows. I added this carpet over here. This is a compositional element because at this point it just kind of felt like there wasn't enough focus on the seed itself. So these carpets are designed to have your eye just follow the blue all the way up to the seed, and there it is. It's glowing. I added the glow. This is a pretty minor one. I jumped into Painter, did some of this kind of blurring out this detail. It was becoming a little too static and 3D image-like, so I wanted it to be more paintery. Added some depth into this pool and added some of these curtains, some more of this blue color. And if you thought the image was green and dark before, get ready because we're about to go darker than that. This is just kind of like trying to fit some of the things into the environment, whereas this is really temporary curtains in this previous version. Trying to add some more depth to it. That was kind of this curtain pass in this one. But it did become a lot darker, and then from there it went completely opposite. Now it's way brighter and everything is blue because in the game it's more of this pristine kind of environment, not really this murky one over here. So yeah, went from murky to blue. That was really just like a major color shift. Colors can really affect the mood, and did so in this piece. Next version is really a minor tweak, but also kind of major because I changed the color of the seed up. I was really kind of getting lost in this, and I wanted more focus to be on the seed itself. Punched out a little more of the light. Add some of these window shapes back here into this pool. Some of those repeating elements are really nice to have in a man-made environment. Pretty minor stuff from here on out. All I did was let's go and add some actual window shapes, not these triangles from the 3D version, and started to work on Undyne a little bit. The Undyne statues. Undyne and these torches, I just ignored them for the longest time. They just look terrible for most of the version, all the way up until the end, where I actually put some work into it. A lot of times that does actually happen with me. I end up ignoring an area and just working on everything else, but not these torches, because man, it's just torches. I want to work on something more interesting. Like this trim, added some of that trim to this rug going down. Just a little neat little more elements into it. Just, oh, I finally got to the torches. And a little bit more Undyne, not really. Just kind of using the base shapes. I actually put the curtains in space, so they're not just floating there. Like, what's this connected to? Nothing, just sits there. And then the last version is just one more pass on Undyne. There she is, the Undyne statues. That's how it was. Started as 3D and just slowly took away at it, adding some of that color in. And that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed sitting through this kind of long commentary. But thanks for watching, and if you want to see more mana, just check out More Month Mana. We're going to be having a lot of that. This has been Kurt Horsfall, and see you later.